Hey everyone, Rev Brad here, and today's From the Touchline podcast features special guest Brooke Ewart. Brooke is the Director of Counseling for Soccer Chaplains United. Brooke and I recently were talking about gratitude, and what a fitting subject on this, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Stay tuned.
The space, and he's found the back of the net.
Just a little off foot, thinking he's going to go far post. Not strong enough with his right hand.
Whips that one in. Far post, almost made him ends, and they have. He has the hat-trick. The second in his career. The third of the night. The hat-trick hero.
Talked about you're not going to be able to sustain that kind of pressure.
To the corner. Goes towards the near post. And you're the angle, and what a goal! What a goal!
Well, I want to welcome today a special guest in studio with me, and it's a volunteer director of counseling with Soccer Chaplains United, Brooke Ewart. Brooke, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is kind of fun. This is kind of cool.
Yeah, this is fun.
So tomorrow's Thanksgiving. It's if you're not from the U.S., it's kind of a big deal. It's a big holiday. Typically, Brooke, what are some family traditions that you're used to around Thanksgiving?
Well, I mean, we always play games. So I don't know where that started or how long that's been, but my mom usually comes up with some crazy, wacky, you can only use one hand and your teammate can only use the other hand. And so you have a right and a left hand that's putting together a series of putting pennies in a baggie, or, tying shoes or putting on clothes. So it's always really crazy. And then usually we watch football, and then of course eating.
What team? No, we got to be clear. This is American football.
Right.
What team would you watch?
Probably the Cowboys game.
Okay. Are you a Cowboys fan?
No.
Who do you root for? Who's your American football team?
Our family roots for the Patriots.
Ooh, boo hiss, boo hiss. I'm from Denver, so it's the Broncos for us. Well, we're talking though. Let's get into football here a little bit, not American football, but let's talk gratitude today. Mm-hmm. Thanksgiving, for those of you not accustomed with the U.S. holiday, it's a time where we give thanks as Americans because of a tradition that happened. The Indian people, the native people of this land, helped the pilgrims who were pretty much struggling and just about on their last rope, and the Native Americans kind of came forward and helped the pilgrim people learn how to fend for themselves in the new world. They taught them how to hunt, fish, plant crops, and they celebrated around a table. They celebrated that essentially they had survived in those early days. Right. And so I think what a great time, especially as we approach, at least in the U.S., the end of Major League Soccer's season. There's a lot of trades that are going on, a lot of movement, a lot of upheaval, turmoil, things. People don't know where they're going to be necessarily playing next year, or maybe some of that's settled, so they're into an off-season mode and rhythm. And so especially for U.S.-born folks that are going to be celebrating Thanksgiving likely at home, around with family. And for those maybe not from this country, they're going to be celebrating in other ways with family, maybe around the Christmas holiday or other holidays where they're from. So I want to talk a little bit about gratitude. And Brooke, one of the things as a chaplain now for 18 seasons or whatever it is, I've noticed a difference between the athletes who have an understanding of what it means to give thanks. To give thanks to God, to give thanks before a meal, to give thanks to coaches, mentors, teammates, family members. I just watch as they go through the different ups and downs of professional life. It just seems to me that those who have a sense of giving gratitude or giving thanks back, they seem to cope better. They seem to do better. I don't know. What have you ever noticed anything like that, or what have you seen in terms of gratitude and elite athletes?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like if a lot of the focus is off of themselves and they're more thankful for their journey, they tend to have a better maybe perspective on life overall. And so I think if that's kind of taught either from parents or maybe there's been a struggle along the way, they're a little more grateful for what they have. I think sometimes the struggle brings out maybe better empathy for others and empathy for themselves. And also just maybe even a higher self-esteem.
Yeah. When you said that, it reminded me of a story. One of the footballers that came to the club recently had told me the story that he and his family were kind of living in their car and kind of moving from team to team, trying to get a tryout. And so they were extremely grateful for the contract with the club and the opportunity to play. And maybe the money wasn't quite what they wanted. Maybe the situation wasn't quite ideal, but thankful to have a job and thankful to be able to continue playing and working this thing out. And so, as you talk about, circumstances can shape our ideas about gratitude, can't they?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, a lot of that just comes from the foundation that we have just in general. Like, if you have a parent that's always saying like, oh, let's be thankful for this, or let's be thankful for, whatever the next one is, that definitely helps so much to just kind of getting that foundation going. But yeah, I think, it's interesting if you can be thankful just in general with what you have, it can make again, back to that perspective, it gives your perspective on life such a much better outlook.
Yeah, one of the Thanksgiving traditions that I've become aware of in recent time is the 5 kernels of corn. And so some families do this around the table. They'll put 5 single kernels of corn at their place setting. And I think this was, I don't know, there's legend or tradition.
It's a tradition.
Yeah. And each of those things becomes something that to give thanks for that particular thing is an opportunity. And so families will go around the table and they'll share 5 different things that they're thankful for, and that can be a powerful thing as well.
Yeah, and I think when it kind of, again, going back to the perspective, when you hear yourself say the things you're thankful for, then all of a sudden the things that you wish you had or that you don't have, they just become so pale.
What does that do in the mind, in the spirit of an elite athlete, someone who's under constant pressure? They're always under the microscope. What does it do? What does it mean to give thanks and gratitude? How do you see that affecting their game?
I think it's a mindset shift so much. I just see when you are thankful or grateful for what you have, again, you're just not focusing on what you haven't done or what you want to do that hasn't been accomplished yet. It kind of changes the perspective for, oh, here are the things that, there are the 5 things I can really think of that I'm so grateful for. It's going to change. You're not thinking about what you don't have at this moment.
Does that make an athlete, in a sense, lighter? Does it make them more free to play or whatever their piece is?
Yeah, I think that's probably a really good point, is that you probably go into a season or a game and you're not focused on the wants as much. You can play, your brain probably doesn't have as much pressure inside, and you can enjoy, I think, your teammates, and there's definitely a different perspective that you're going to enjoy, I think, within the game itself.
So as a counselor, are there any exercises that you will take an athlete through for them to consider gratitude or just reflect and kind of maybe share those things and get those things kind of out on the table?
Yeah, I think a little bit of that is kind of, to me, goes through goal setting. Like, here's some goals we want to work on. And I think if we can get to a point where they're actually so appreciative of what they've actually accomplished so far, I think sometimes it's just, again, kind of going back to that mindset shift. If they actually can see that they have all these things that they've actually accomplished, the great and the small. And I'll just give you a good example. Actually, yesterday, our daughter called and she just said, here, look, this was my picture from 2 years ago on Instagram. And it was a really hard time of her life. And she just, at the end, just said, God is good. Like, I think for sometimes it's just a little bit of distance sometimes helps too, for these athletes to realize that it's not all going bad or it's not all wonderful all the time. You have to kind of sit in that middle. But then when the big things that are these accomplishments come along, to really sit back and go, oh, wow, what was it like a few years ago? Or what's it like now versus then?
Yeah, I've heard athletes say that as well, that sometimes when you're going through the trying time, it's not really a time where you really feel grateful. No. But then looking back on it, many times I hear them say, I'm thankful that happened. Mm-hmm. I'm thankful that I learned this from this difficult situation. Mm-hmm. I'm thankful that I grew out of this. And as they express that, then they realize, and sometimes as a chaplain, or I sometimes know as counselors too, you help people frame and see that, and that becomes a tool, a resource for them for the next challenge that they go through. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's just in general, even just, a non-athlete versus an athlete. I think it's sometimes giving them that, like, hey, let's step into this space and remember what, before the injury or before you got sidelined, how can you just look back at what you've already experienced and be grateful for that? And just knowing that there may or probably are going to be some pretty cool things around the bend. You just have to get to that point and be thankful, even for the space you're sitting in right now too. You're learning something.
Great. Well, Brooke, thanks so much. I think, if you're listening today and you hail from the U.S. and Thanksgiving is part of your tradition, just want to pray a blessing on your time with your family and friends. A lot of people, sometimes they can't make it home, so Friendsgiving, I know, is pretty popular as well. But, in some space where you might be, I just want to encourage you, get in community, get with somebody. I often tell people a lot of times that can be around a church, a faith community. There can be other extensions of that as well, where you just kind of feel welcomed into, and maybe it's not your biological family, but maybe it's another adoptive family. Maybe it's your coworkers who all say, hey, let's get together. And I just encourage you in those moments, take the time, take a moment within the feasting and the celebration and the coming together to give thanks. And I think that there's a wonderful thing that can happen within our hearts, within our souls, within our minds. It almost has this cleansing effect when we pause for a moment. So, maybe from today's podcast, you take the 5 kernel idea, or maybe there's something else that you recall as a family tradition, or it's a tradition from your own culture, your own space, where there's a way of giving thanks, there's a way of celebrating, there's a way of looking back and recognizing and remembering. And those things can give you encouragement, strength, joy for the journey ahead, no matter what the journey may hold. And so, Brooke, I want to thank you for coming in today and just sharing this and talking about gratitude.
Welcome. Thank you.
This is Rev Brad and Brooke coming to you from the Touchline.